Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this webinar this afternoon. Apologies, we were slightly delayed in getting everything kicked off. We had some technical difficulties in getting the slides shown on the screen. So thank you so much for being able to join. My name's Claire Canning and I'm one of the programme managers for the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. I'm joined here today by my colleague Tom Speedy, who is Junior Project Manager, supporting me with the grant funding side and who's actually leading this webinar and leading on the competition. We're also delighted to be joined today by our industry sponsors. So we'll be hearing from speakers from Equinor, Ocean Winds and Scottish Power Renewables. And I think looks like lots of people have joined, so I think we can kick off. In terms of housekeeping, this session is going to be recorded, so everybody that's registered, you will receive a recording of the webinar and also a copy of the slides. We're going to have 15 minutes at the end, hopefully, for Q&A. If our industry sponsors are able to stay on for the Q&A session, fantastic. I would encourage everybody to put your questions into the chat function. Sorry, not chat function, but the Q&A function. So welcome as many questions. If we can't get through everything, we'll make sure to collate all questions and make sure that we submit the FAQs over to everybody who's joined. In terms of what we're going to cover on the call, we're going to cover the sort of innovation grant competition itself, the aims, the themes, and the eligibility. And then we will hear from our industry sponsors who are going to talk around some of the particular challenge areas that they have across these different competition themes. And then Tom will then sort of close off talking about the process for application, and then we'll do a Q&A. So have to pass over to you, Tom.
Thank you. So just quick introduction. My name's Tom Speedy. I'm one of the junior project managers here at the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. And as Claire said, I'll be leading this competition. So just a brief introduction in terms of who we are and what we do. So the OWGP, the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership, we are funded partly from the Offshore Wind Industry Council and delivered by the ORE Catapult. The OWGP, it's a long-term business transformation programme with an aim to increase the UK offshore wind supply chain. So we do that via our two programmes, that being the business transformation, which is our structured programme to help companies grow. And then we've also got our grant funding, which is for developing new products, services and capacity and capability. In general, the OWGP, we have four key aims that are being to increase UK content and UK projects, as well as increasing economic value, increase export opportunities, as well as delivering new IP. So for the grant funding, we will have two grant funding opportunities available. We have the development grants, which are sort of larger grant funding opportunities, and then we have our innovation grants. Now this call is focused on the innovation grants, which are smaller scale grants for game-changing projects. This is to deliver new innovative technologies, products and services. It's so notable for this is that the innovation grants are for this call are from 25k to 200k, so slightly more than what we've had for our previous innovation grant competitions. So to date, OWGP, we have awarded 51 projects funding. So those are just a snapshot of some of them are on the screen at the minute. And on the left-hand side there, you can find our contact details if you need to get in touch with myself or my colleague Claire for any more information on the grant funding programs. So I'll give an overview of the innovation grant itself. So this innovation grant is slightly different to our last, if any of those who are joining have applied for our previous innovation grant. Now this funding competition is aimed at delivering new products, services and technologies in the offshore wind market. And this is a very targeted funding competition. So what is new about this competition is that we have split it into two strands. We have a strand focusing on projects on decarbonisation within the offshore wind sector. And then we also have our improved reliability. We're also fortunate enough that this call is also being, we've got industry sponsors for this call. They'll be taking on a sort of champion role to offer advisory support. Those sponsors are, of course, Scottish Renewable Powers, Equinor and Ocean Winds. Now, the innovation grant is the aim of this is to support the growth of UK businesses, and we're really focusing on UK content, jobs, exports, and IP. For this call, we've got a total funding pot of £2 million available, and that is for grants of between 25k and 200k. Now, we're looking at projects that are going to be between 6 and 18 months for duration. So of course, this competition, we're delighted to have champions by our offshore wind industry sponsors. The key roles that they'll be bringing to this competition is they'll be really taking on a sort of a champion and advisory role. They'll be helping with this competition to get a real insight into the sector challenges and innovation themes that have been highlighted. So the roles of the sponsors, they'll be playing they helped in the selection of the themes, and additionally with the promotion of the call and really bringing a spotlight to this funding competition. They'll also be helping and assisting in the shortlist selection. So do please note that the industry sponsors will have access to some of the information that's provided as part of your application, and this will be perhaps in the part of the final assessment stage. So please do keep that in mind, but we'll be very open to any issues surrounding confidentiality and conflicts of interest. So if there's any issues with that, please do let us know as part of your application. The sponsorship, they'll also be offering, there's the opportunity for them to help and participate in any pitching sessions and workshops for any of those successful applications. It is important to note, however, that the industry sponsors, they'll be much more of an advisory role. So they won't actually they won't have any financial or contractual obligations to OWGP or any of the successful companies. Briefly, I'm just going to go over a bit about the background for the call and how we arrived here. Now, OWGP, we took out quite an extensive engagement exercise, and that was to identify some of the priority areas and challenges within the offshore wind sector. Now, the focus on this was we're looking at innovation areas and challenges within the UK that has the potential for some high export and high UK growth potential. We did quite a large engagement exercise with some of the groups. So we had the Offshore Wind Innovation Hub. We also had the groups within our colleagues at the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult and the O&M Centre of Excellence and the Floating Offshore Wind Centre of Excellence, as well as the innovation workstream. We're also fortunate to have our industry steering group, so our OWGP reference group, provide their input and feedback on the scope areas. So as you can see, they highlighted 6 high-level growth, high-level impact and innovation priority areas, and from this is where we scoped out the final scope for this funding competition. All the links to these groups will be provided in the slides if you would like to get any more information on those groups. For the actual scope of this competition itself, as I say, this is a slightly different to any of those who have applied for innovation grants in the past. Now, we have 2 key strands. So companies will have proposals focusing on one of the following areas, that being decarbonisation or the improved reliability. So for decarbonisation, we're looking at projects that are going to focus on really reducing and helping decarbonise the offshore wind supply chain, and that is throughout the life cycle and at all points of the supply chain for offshore wind, whether that be looking at the decarbonisation of the vessels themselves or around perhaps recyclability of components and the emissions tracking of the offshore wind cycle. This is just a list of some of the projects that we'll look at that we would accept, but of course, projects that if they demonstrate a commitment to addressing decarbonisation challenges within the offshore wind sector, they will also be considered. Similarly, for the second strand in improved reliability, we're looking at projects that are going to be focused on, say, condition monitoring, but improved the optimization and improvement of any of the phases of offshore wind and corrosion and protection, those sort of practices. Again, if there's projects which have a clear and direct outline that their project is going to focus on improved reliability, this will also be considered as part of the assessment process. Next, I'm just going to briefly outline some of the eligibility for this call. Now, the most important part for this is that OWGP is focused on UK content and growth, so we will be looking for a UK registered company of any size. The applicants, they must not be in receipt of current OWGP funding. So those who have applied from the 2021 December development grants onwards will not be eligible to apply for this funding. However, those that applied for previous innovation grants in September 2021, they will be eligible to apply, but they must demonstrate commitment to their current projects, and this is going to be a new addition to a project. We're wanting to have their applicants that are resubmitting proposal from a previous OWGP funding competition can only do this once. So please have a clear new project for this proposal. And we're also looking for technology that's near to market. So we can't have anything that's too early stage concepts. We need sort of a proof of commercialization and that is ready to market. Having that clear business need will also be key for this. And that's something else that I'll cover a bit more in the application process. Additionally, that there needs to be that clear interest to grow the business in terms of turnover, UK jobs, exports and IP. These are the key KPI metrics that both OWGP and your application will be assessed on. So please show the real value added and how this project is going to facilitate growth. It's important to note that this is not for our business as usual aspect. We're looking for a new project that's going to deliver growth for your company as part of the innovation grant. And as part of that, for funding, it is a matched contribution of at least 50% for your total project costs. This can also be an in-kind contribution. So, for example, a 200k project that could be of a 100k OWGP grant, and then the rest with either a cash investment or an in-kind contribution from to make up the rest of that project. So I've gone through briefly the eligibility. Now we've got a great opportunity to hear from our sponsors. So first we will have Scottish Renewables. We have Kirsty Adams, who is going to be taking on, who will be sponsoring the decarbonisation strand of the funding competition. So Kirsty, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everybody. As Tom says, I'm from Scottish Power Renewables, Senior Supply Chain Strategy Manager, and we are one of the developers sponsoring the decarbonisation strand. So next slide, please. Thanks, Tom. I think, yeah, is that everything? Yeah, sorry, that's it's a bit of a clicker, that one. So just to kind of flash up, I guess, our offshore wind pipeline, so Scottish Power Renewables, for those who don't know, is part of the Iberdrola group. So a very kind of global company, part of the Iberdrola kind of the group that we have. We're kind of an integrated utility, so we look after networks, retail businesses and generation businesses across the globe. So our offshore wind business specifically is very global, and when we talk about Scottish Power Renewables, we speak about it in the context of Iberdrola as well. So this is just kind of showing our current pipeline. We've got about 1.2 gigawatts currently in operation, which is increasing to around 3.1 gigawatts by 2025. And in addition, we've secured a further pipeline of 5 gigawatts and looking to develop 30 gigawatts in the future. So as you can see here, we're kind of really global across various geographies, and recently there's been a real focus particularly in moving into the kind of APAC region as well. But specific to the UK, we've got our East Anglia 1 project, which is currently in operation of 714 megawatts. We're currently developing our East Anglia Hub projects, which is made up of East Anglia 3, which is currently under construction, alongside East Anglia 1 North and 2, which are in development. And then at the start of the year, we recently secured kind of 5 gigawatts worth of floating wind in the Scotland leasing round alongside our partner Shell, as a 50-50 joint venture, with an additional 2 gigawatts of a kind of solo fixed bottom project. So that's kind of our UK pipeline at the moment. Next slide, please, Tom. Thank you. So yeah, in terms of decarbonising the supply chain, so as a renewable energy developer, when we talk about the kind of scopes of emissions, we don't have any kind of scope 1 emissions being that renewable energy generator. And then our kind of scope 2 emissions at SPR, which looks at kind of indirect carbon emissions, which come from the kind of generation of purchased electricity, for example, network losses, or kind of emissions that are come through our kind of building use, etc. That only makes up around less than 5% of our carbon emissions at the moment. So what we're really focused on at SPR is that scope 3 emissions, which is looking at the kind of indirect emissions that come through the value chain, which is where our real focus is, and where we see the supply chain having a huge role in helping us meet our ambitious targets, which would help decarbonise our supply chain in that sense. So in this year, we put in place a dedicated team, established a team that's looking at decarbonising the supply chain within the offshore business. And they are basically going to be responsible for decarbonising our kind of decarbonisation plan. And it's that team as well that will be on hand to help, as Tom mentioned at the start of the call, with any of the kind of the activities that will go on through the funding call, and looking at kind of the review of the applications, etc. So by 2030, we're looking to reduce our scope 3 emissions by 63% and then be carbon neutral across all scopes by 2050. So as you can see, it's quite ambitious targets, and as I said, we can see the supply chain making a kind of a real impact in helping us reach those targets. So basically getting involved in this and opportunities such as this Offshore Wind Growth Partnership funding call is really important to us to be able to meet those targets. Next slide, please, Tom. Thank you. So I suppose in the kind of wider Iberdrola context, our kind of commitment to decarbonisation is driven by the science-based targets to prevent the worst impact of climate change. And we kind of view that one of the real impactful ways to do this is via kind of the circular economy. And we see that this circular economy is really critical to decarbonising the supply chain. As an example, around 70 to 80% of the environmental impact of wind turbine manufacturing originates from materials extraction and processing. So that's kind of one of our real focus areas there, is looking at how can we drive towards a circular economy and look at perhaps recycling and refurbishment when it comes to wind turbine manufacturing, rather than manufacturing everything from scratch and having those real kind of carbon intensive processes to kind of manufacture the turbines. And then we have, as a company, introduced environmental, social and governance assessments within our tender processes. So there's a big focus on what our prospective suppliers are doing to operate more sustainably. And we've got, real people on hand, such as the decarbonisation team, to help with that throughout the tender process and give advice, etc. So it's something that we've got put a real focus on. As you can see here, these are some of the kind of key decarbonisation priorities that we see within Iberdrola. They look quite similar to what Tom was talking about at the start of the call. So, the turbines being one of them, foundations, particularly with the growth and the introduction to floating wind. We're going to see some new challenges there, because it's we see that technology being quite steel intensive, which is typically quite a high carbon intensive process when it comes to manufacturing. And then vessels being one as well, looking at kind of alternative fuels and the use of green hydrogen. For example, we've already started looking at this, and with our East Anglia 1 project, we ran a pilot project where we kind of used waste vegetable oils in some of our CTVs. So it's something that we're already starting to do and look at, and it's something that we're really keen to work with supply chain to look to implement these new technologies. So yeah, that's just some of the kind of key decarbonisation priorities. But as Tom said at the start of the call, there are many others, and we're really open to speaking to any suppliers with any kind of ideas that they've got for decarbonisation within the supply chain. And I think, Tom, if you move on to the next slide, I think that's everything from me. But yeah, I'm able to hang about until the end of the call, so happy to take any further questions.
Yes, thanks for that, Kirsty. Yeah, we'll hold the questions till the end, and then we can run through them. So if you could hang on that, that'd be fantastic. But if anyone's got any questions, please do it, enter them into the Q&A function. So that's fantastic from our first sponsor. We're moving on to our second one now. So we'll have Sophie Bannon from Equinor. Now Equinor are going to be covering both the decarbonisation and the improved reliability strand itself. So we'll be covering those two. So I'll pass on to Sophie now. I'll be moving across.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone, some slight IT issues at my end today, not my day. Thank you very much, Tom, and really nice to be here with you all today, virtually at least. So I wanted to start by giving everybody a little bit of background in relation to Equinor in the UK. Conscious you're probably all from a mix of backgrounds, and that this might help to put some context to what it is that we might be looking for from you collectively for these two different challenges. So I'll just click through these. So first, a little bit about offshore wind in the North Sea for Equinor. So Equinor is a Norwegian state-owned company. We have quite a legacy now, 50 years old this year, lots of big parties to celebrate. And we are initially and predominantly an oil and gas company, but very much now a broad energy company looking to build on that and move forwards with the energy transition. What that means for us is that as a company, we're aiming to be net zero by 2050. And to achieve that, we need to look for pioneering, innovative and collaborative solutions to help us get there. Offshore wind is obviously a really important part of that mix for us. And what you can see on the right of the slide here is just a highlight of the offshore wind projects we have in the North Sea currently. Those projects are at various stages of development. We've got Sheringham Shoal and Dudgeon, two of our older projects from UK round 2 offshore wind leasing. We've got the Dogger Bank projects that are in construction at the moment. Those were part of the round 3 wind leasing process, fixed bottom again there. We've also got 2 projects, Dudgeon and Sheringham Shoal extensions, that are going through the planning process at the moment. And then interestingly as well, and as many of you I'm sure are aware, we had both the world's first floating wind farm at High Wind, Scotland at 30 megawatts. And we have just recently had first power from our High Wind Tampen project, which is connected to oil and gas facilities. We have other projects globally as well, and we're always looking for opportunities to export the good solutions and bring the companies that we see in the UK as good success stories to those projects. So in relation to decarbonisation, I just wanted to share a little bit with you about our plans in relation to climate. As a company, I've mentioned our legacy in relation to oil and gas and the fact that we're now striving to be a broad energy company that's building on the global requirements that we collectively all see for a transition towards a carbon neutral society. So for us, we would like to reach carbon neutral operations by 2030, and a big part of that is growing renewables. And I think sometimes it's very easy for us as a company to look at offshore wind and think it is quite a decarbonised industry, but actually there is still more that we can do. A project that's particularly close to my heart, my day job, is as digitalisation manager for Dogger Bank wind farms. But I just wanted to give you some context in terms of some of the challenges that we face, which may help you to work out if your solutions could be something that are of interest to us. For us, Dogger Bank is something quite new in terms of the size and scale of the project we're talking about, both in terms of structures. We'll be deploying what at the time we contracted them with the world's largest turbines. I'm sure soon to be succeeded by the next. But they're large and that presents us with new challenges over and above the size and scale of turbines we've seen historically. But then fundamentally, the actual project areas we're talking about for these projects are enormous. So the map on the right shows the project areas collectively overlaid with the Greater London area. That's quite some scale. So if you think about how we operate offshore, we have quite a challenge in terms of keeping the hundreds of turbines we'll be deploying operational, efficient, and reliable, as we'll come on to in the second composition area. So in terms of some of the specific challenges that we've highlighted for decarbonisation, I would say these are by no means all of the challenges we face, and we're always open to new ideas and innovative solutions to things that we may not have highlighted ourselves. But the challenges we face across our projects are wide-ranging. So for older projects like Sheringham Shoal, which has now been operational for just over 10 years, we're starting to see that it's showing its age at times. The turbines were once state-of-the-art, and for us as an industry moving quite quickly, they're now comparatively relatively old. But we want to make sure that this project has a significant life left to it. We, like a huge number of other projects in the UK, have deployed the Siemens 3.6 megawatt machines for that project. And we think that there's quite a big potential for help in looking at refurbishment of parts for that turbine, not only for us, but for the others on the call today and more broadly within the industry. We've had some successes previously with parts refurbishments, and we're keen to see more as that growth and increase in requirements increases as the project continues to age. And that same philosophy, I think, can be applied to other turbine makes, other projects, as we start to see projects mature in the UK sector. We're also being challenged increasingly across our wind farms on the circular economy and recyclability of components. I put some great words in here to test my tongue this afternoon. Fundamentally, if we can replace just a small proportion of larger components where perhaps our OEMs might take an approach where they replace a whole component, then that's potentially a significant improvement for us when we look at the wide fleet of turbines that we now have and will shortly be increasing further on Dogger Bank in the North Sea. We've then got other issues that fall into some of the categories that Tom highlighted earlier. In the southern North Sea, we're seeing an increasing emphasis on the need to consider how we might go about decommissioning our projects right from the beginning. So when we're planning the designs for the turbines, for the foundations, for the cable installation and protection, how can we proactively think about how we can make those features and those facilities easy to decommission? That's a particular an area of particular interest on Dogger Bank. Dogger Bank Wind Farm will be built within a special area of conservation, and there's quite a lot of emphasis therefore on protecting the natural habitats in that region and how we can work with those habitats but still operate our wind farm successfully. We are also always constantly seeking improvements in decarbonisation of our growing vessel fleet. For Dogger Bank alone, we will be deploying 4 SOVs, each with an associated watercraft. Now, those contracts have been placed, and those vessels, I'm really pleased to say, have a particularly low carbon footprint for their vessel type. However, if there are other opportunities that you can see that we could still look to apply in the future, that's always something we're interested in exploring. And finally, on decarbonisation, perhaps doesn't fit nice and neatly into this, but I think we wanted to mention it. We as a company more broadly are very active in the developing hydrogen economy in the UK. And we see that there is more and more potential for that in the future moving forwards. One technology that perhaps is as relevant moving forwards for offshore wind turbines generally, but also those that will be looking at hydrogen production, is the potential use of island mode technologies for these and grid-connected projects. Moving on then to thinking about some of the challenges we face in improved reliability and robustness. The slide is quite sparse here. That doesn't necessarily reflect the scale of the challenge. It's just how to summarize these things as simply as possible. Fundamentally, particularly when we're operating as far offshore as Dogger Bank, we want to minimize offshore man hours. That reduces risk, it increases safety, and fundamentally also helps to increase the reliability of our turbines, or demonstrates that we've been able to do so. A few key areas we see for potential technological development and we believe can happen and can come forwards. We would love to be able to remove any rope-based testing, maintenance and repairs for blades. As an industry, it's now pretty standard for us to undergo visual inspections with drones. That in itself is perhaps something we can procure relatively easily from the market. But there's a huge amount more we have to do with those blades to keep them operating reliably. We need to do lightning protection tests. We need to make sure that we unblock drainage holes. All of these things currently need us to send people on ropes to do those tasks. So removing that is a potential area for us that we would like to focus on. Wherever possible, we're also keen to look at survey automation. And the reason I've put entirely here is quite critical in this concept. We see a lot of companies now coming forwards with potential autonomous survey platforms. Those are great, and we have looked at deploying them already on Dogger Bank for certain surveys. But fundamentally, if there are types of surveys that those vessels can't undertake, that still requires us to send a vessel out. And so what we'd like to see is complete offerings from some of those platforms moving forward so that we can eliminate the need to send vessels and we can automate and carry out those activities more efficiently. This third bullet is really a big category in itself, but failure prediction is really important in terms of how we can operate most efficiently, how we can minimize the need for visits to turbines, but also trying to prevent things going wrong before they do, and fundamentally, therefore, maximizing the amount of offshore wind energy we can capture. In itself, that has a huge number of subcategories. One of the things that we're quite keen to ensure is that the projects are highly censored. However, when they're already in construction, consideration of ability to retrofit is really important for us. If there are things we want to add later, it needs to be as easy as possible to add those to our turbines. There are other challenges we face. For example, our HVDC export cables are over 200 kilometers long for some of the Dogger Bank projects. And we're seeing across the industry an increasing demand for long export cables. At these lengths, there can be sections in the middle that traditional cable monitoring systems will struggle to cover. So that's a particular area of interest for us if we can improve on that generally. And then finally, just to summarize on improved reliability, anything that can be proposed or suggested to help us improve the life cost of the introduction of any solution. So I mentioned before the consideration of retrofitting. That's quite important for us. We are keen to be able to continue to grow and evolve and take on board the best technological solutions, but we don't want to take our projects or our turbines out of service for a long period of time to do that. It's quite an important consideration for us, and that would be something we'd be really interested in working with potential suppliers on. If you've got a good solution, but you're struggling to understand how that can be achieved, please do let us know and we'd be happy to discuss that. So that's a really whistle-stop tour and probably not particularly specific, but hopefully gives some good indications of the types of challenges across decarbonisation and improved reliability that we see in Equinor.
Thank you for that. I'll just slide back in the end now. Thank you for that. That was really, it's always great to hear some of the specific challenge areas for both the strands, and great to hear an update on Dogger Bank. So next up, we have Ocean Winds. We have got Daniel Santa Cruz. So Ocean Winds will be focusing on the improved reliability strand for the funding competition. So it'll be fantastic to hear some of the areas that they're looking to focus on. So I'll pass over now to Daniel.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Daniel Santa Cruz, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Director for Ocean Winds. Let me just give you a few numbers on Ocean Winds and who we are. We are a very young company that was created in 2020 as a result of a joint venture between NG and EDP Renewables. And we are currently operating across the globe. So we have projects in operation in Europe, and we have projects in development across the globe. We have currently 1.5 gigawatts of capacity, of operational capacity, and we have almost 1 gigawatt under construction, and more than 12 gigawatts in development. Particularly in the UK, we have our Moray East project up and running, which is almost 1 gigawatt. We also have Moray West, which is in construction right now. And we were awarded last year the Caledonia wind farm, which is going to be 2 gigawatts worth of project. And I think it was last month, or it was September, October, we were awarded a new project in the Shetland Islands in the northeast of Scotland for more than 2,000 megawatts. So our targets for 2025 in terms of installed capacity will be around 6 gigawatts of operational wind farms. And for the wind farms in development, we are aiming at having at least 10 gigawatts in development for 2025. So we are, as Tom said, we are sponsoring the Improved Reliability Challenge here. And I thought I wanted to first a little bit of define what we understand by reliability. Being the probability that an asset will continue to operate in with full functionality over the time, right? And we connect very clearly the reliability with the reduction in the LCOE, levelized cost of energy, right? So next slide, please. Yeah, so in order to increase or keep the reliability of an asset, we see that the maintenance of it is the key ingredient for doing that. And within that, the planned maintenance is gaining more and more importance, especially the maintenance that is preventive. And for the preventive maintenance, we can distinguish, or we do distinguish between two different types. One is reliability-based maintenance, that is, setting some kind of thresholds for some parameters of equipment, and when those parameters are, reached, then a maintenance order is issued. Or the predictive maintenance, which is going one step further and trying to make prognosis exercises of what's going to happen based on a number of information sources and analysis of that information. And those two are very data-driven types of maintenance. So next slide, please. So typically we have in wind farms, we do have tons and tons of data that are coming over from the asset integrity monitoring systems, from the SCADA of the equipment, of the machines, of the wind turbines, and from other data sources. And with all those data, it is very, very important that we create a proper data collection system with proper data acquisition processes, contextualization and aggregation, quality check and validation of the data, storage of the data, and finally be able to deliver those data nicely to, in order to gain some insights and some intelligence out of the data. So the combination of these multiple sources is creating this huge system of data pools, right? So if we go to the next slide. This is the key for us. So the thing is, from the moment that when a failure starts till the moment you realize that the failure is there, it's that the component is failing, there is a gap of time, there's a decent amount of time that the component is degrading, it's wearing, it's malfunctioning, right? And one of our goals is that we can reduce to the minimum the amount of time that goes between, in this graph, in between S and P. So from the failure start till the moment where the degradation is detected. And that can only be done through very advanced analytic techniques. So filtering data and analyzing data that can give you some insights on what's going to happen. And that will automatically reduce the downtime of the components of the machines, and will improve the O&M planning. So that is a little bit our concrete objective here. Next slide, please. So currently we have, again, I was saying, currently have tons and tons of data coming from the different equipment, such as the structural or the foundations monitoring systems, or the drivetrain for the turbine monitoring system, or even the cable temperature monitoring. But this comes with challenges. Go to the next slide, please. The problem is that they don't provide direct outcomes for us. They normally provide a static picture of the status of this component, of this machine, or when they provide analysis of the data, the analysis is very limited to the data sets that they produce. So those systems are not optimal we would say. Some of them rely on algorithms that are created by different companies, but which are not open to us. Therefore, it's difficult to adapt those algorithms to the reality of the operation of the wind farm. As well as when receiving those analyses, there needs to be a dedicated team of people understanding those analyses and trying to mix them to get outcomes to make meaningful decisions for O&M, right? For O&M in the wind farm. Finally, we see that more and more these analyses, these data are being offered under commercial models that are based on subscriptions and very closed environments. So we see that there's an opportunity here for creating something new, something easier for the wind farm developers that is more agnostic to the manufacturer of the components, that is more flexible to adapt to the reality of the operations, and that gives insights to make immediate decisions for O&M activities. Okay, as well as this industry is changing, we all know that, and we need these systems to be adaptable to the changes that are coming. Okay, so this is the basic opportunity that we see here. Next slide, please. So examples of things that we would see value on is on cables, for example, on transformers, on generators, on blade inspection, things, measuring things, having data, proper data, mixing data from not only one system, but mixing with the other systems to get more insightful conclusions. So for example, for the cables, real-time temperature and vibration profile in combination with electrical parameters, for example. For the transformers, real-time temperature and dissolved gas in combination with electrical parameters for life cycle assessment. In the generators side, the frequency profile for vibration in combination with loads and operational data for failure modes characterization, or in blades inspection, as my colleague in Equinor was stating, the automated inspection analysis of blades with damage classification. Next slide, please. And that was for components, but if we look at wind turbines performance, then we can have as well some examples of things that we would see as opportunities for the supply chain to propose solutions for. For example, for measuring the yaw misalignment in real time based on the SCADA data and other sensors, or the power curve efficiency, analyzing it combines with the wind data to determine the performance of the wind turbine, the real performance of the wind turbine. And finally, for the blades, again, early blade damage detection based not only on sensors that are installed on the blade, but inferred from other parameters such as operational and environmental data, so that we can reduce the number of inspections at the downtime. So as we say here, these are just examples, but in general, advanced analytics to improve wind farms' reliability are a huge field for exploitation and full of opportunities for smart companies that want to propose solutions for that. And I think that is all from our side, if I'm not wrong. Next slide, please, Tom. Oh yeah, the key takeaways. Yeah, that's a little bit of conclusions for the presentation. Again, reducing the gap, the time gap between the failure moment and the moment that you consider or you detect it has failed. The asset monitoring systems currently are not ideal. They are suboptimal, not fit for purpose for the development for the developer's purpose. We need new solutions, manufacturer agnostic and more flexible and more open algorithms to implement condition-based and predictive maintenance. And it's important that these systems, that these tools can give us usable O&M insights for making decisions on the go and quickly. That is everything on ocean winds, I believe. So thanks very much, and happy to take questions.
Thank you for that, Daniel. Once again, it's really valuable to hear some of the examples, especially around reliability and some of the real challenge areas for the sector. So moving on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the application process itself, and then we'll have some time to go through the Q&A at the end. So to apply for the funding call, this is done through the OWGP website. So if you follow the link above there and go into our opportunities and our grant funding, you'll find links to both the decarbonisation and the improved reliability strands and funding competitions. There you'll be able to download our scoping guidance documents, and that will give you all the information you need about the funding competition itself, but will also outline the application form. Now, we are using Microsoft Forms as part of this application, so unfortunately that does mean that you're unable to save your application as you're going through it. So we really do recommend that you read through the scoping guidance document and you use that to draft up your responses. Questions, there'll be a blend of text responses, so that's for the meatier questions in the application, but there'll also be some where we're asked for some financial summaries, so there'll be some numerical and drop-down responses and questions there. So on the right-hand side there, you can see a sort of snapshot of what's expected from the innovation grant application form. As part of the application form, there is an opportunity to submit some additional materials. This is to be done in the form of a PDF, and it can be up to 5 pages long. This is an opportunity to add in financial summaries. There's a bit more of a breakdown in the finances for the project, but it's also an opportunity to add any additional information that you think might support your application. That could be a more detailed project plan, Gantt chart of how this is going to be conducted, and any other supporting information that might be relevant. Now, this should be emailed to the OWGP team at the email address on the screen there, so info@owgp.org.uk by the closing date. And if you can save that and send it as the appropriate format of your company's name and then Appendix 2022. So for the assessment of the application, so this is a single stage application. So unlike our development grants where there are two stages, this is just a single stage for the application. These will be reviewed by the OWGP team just to ensure that the projects that have been proposed as part of the application meets the general scope and the outlined eligibility criteria. These will then be assessed by a pool of independent external assessors, and they will have experience within the sector and within the industry. Again, I'm just going to reiterate that the assessments will be that they'll be based on the information that's submitted, but our industry sponsors, they will have access to submissions. They may assist us in the final shortlisting selection. So just please bear that in mind. But if you do have any issues, if you have concerns about the confidentiality, please just reach out and let us know, and we can accommodate to this. We'll make sure to be sensitive around the information that's provided within the part of the application. You will receive the notification of the decision of your application on the 17th of March 2023, and you will receive feedback shortly after. So you'll feed whether you've been successful or not, and companies will then receive a feedback sheet outlining the reasons behind the scoring for your application. So this is just covering the evaluation criteria for the call for the application itself. The first two sections of the application, these are not assessed. So section 1 is a project summary. That is just so we have a very high level understanding of what the project itself is going to do. And then section 2, that's to do with the company information and contact details. So none of that's assessed, it's just information that we need to know as part of the call. There will then be various sections where we need to understand the background and relevance to the call. So you should really be having a clear demonstration of the experience that you have within offshore wind, or the expertise in a similar industry and technology sector that's moving into offshore wind. There needs to be a very clear understanding of the challenges for your project, and a very and a clear insight of the market opportunity. So what is the route to market for this product and how they're going to exploit that market? This is really necessary as part of your application to understand that the market you're dealing with. More information about all this will be within the scope and guidance and the application form itself. So it's clear what we are looking for as part of these answers. We then move on to sort of the appropriateness and the solution. So these are the challenges that you've identified and the opportunities that you identified. So how is this going to unlock growth for your company? How is this going to facilitate the step change that you need for you to move within the sector, and what route to market and challenges it's going to address? The next stage is really where you get to talk about what your project is going to do. This is where you really outline what the product or services that this project is going to bring. But this is also the key point where we need to understand how is this project going to be managed, how is it going to be broken down into its project and its components, what is the project plan going to be. So as part of this, we need to understand some clear milestones, the project breakdowns and work packages, the tools and the processes that you're going to be used to make sure this project is delivered effectively. The latter stages of this application, this is where we're looking at the additionality and the value for money. So what is the value for money that this project is going to do? How is this going to add growth to your company? And how would this go ahead? How would this perhaps not go ahead without OWGP funding? This is important, so we know that the key impact, and we know that there's a real value for money in the money that we are awarding. So this is a very key and important part of the application. There's then leads on to an opportunity to discuss the KPIs for the project. This is to show what impact is this project going to have on your company and allow you to facilitate that growth. So we look at the jobs, the turnover, the IP and the exports, as well as any additional benefits and impact that this project may have. Now we're asking for you to make some forecasts for in the next year, 3 years and up to 2030. These have to be reasonable forecasts, and this is a part of how we can see this project will really have a step change in growth for your company and your project. In terms of the timescales for this funding competition, so this launched in earlier this month, the 9th of November. The deadline will be the 20th of January next year, 2023. And as I said, applications will be notified on whether the application has been successful or not by March the 17th. We're looking for projects to be able to start on the 1st of April 2023. So please keep that in mind when figuring out whether your project and application will be acceptable or not. Yes, would this go ahead for April next year? If you do have any questions as to whether the project fits within the criteria, or if you just have questions about the competition in general, please do reach out to a member of the OWGP team prior to your application. We can try and assist if you've got any questions there. So you can find my email address and my colleague Claire's on the screen there. But our addresses are also within the OWGP website itself. And this is just a very sort of summary of how to submit and apply for the grant itself. So first of all, please do register on our website. There you'll be able to get notifications of any of the other upcoming opportunities that we have. And then we have your contact details, and you'll be able to hear more about funding opportunities and be registered with us. Do draft a response to the application and the questions that are found in the scope and guidance documents. Again, I'll just sort of reiterate that it is either the decarbonisation or the improved reliability. Companies can only apply for one of these, and there should only be one submission per company for a project, for an application. Once you've drafted up your responses from the scope and guidance, please then paste those into either the decarbonisation or the improved reliability application form and submit that. You will receive a PDF copy of your application once that's been submitted and confirmation. Additionally, any supporting material should be emailed separately to the OWGP team by the info@ email address there before 5 p.m. on the stated deadline. There will be a question at the very end of the application stating whether you are submitting additional information, so we will know whether you intend to send information on to us, and we'll have that on file. As I said, you'll then receive an email and this will acknowledge to confirm that your application has been received. So we've sort of covered over the process of the application itself and the 2 strands. So we'll now take a sort of opportunity to go through the questions that have come up in the Q&A. As we're doing that though, I will put up, we have some sort of frequently asked questions, so put them up on the screen just in case any of these have come to mind, but we'll now sort of go through the questions themselves.
Yeah, so thanks, Tom. I'm going to help facilitate the Q&A, and I've been sort of looking at some of the questions coming in as the presentations have been delivered. So got a couple of questions here around sort of the size of the grant contribution and eligibility. So we've got a question here about if a £400,000 project with a £200,000 grant contribution would be eligible. The answer to that question is yes. There isn't necessarily a size, a sort of a cap or limitation on the size of the project or the budget. The only limitation is in the grant request to OWGP. So the maximum available grant is £200,000. So it's just managing that within the sort of overall size of the project. We've got a question around, I think, for contact details from industry sponsors. So I'm just going to double check with all of our sponsors if they're happy for contact details to be shared, and I'll make sure that that goes in the circulation of the slides and the recording. And of course, we were happy to facilitate introductions as well as appropriate. There was a question, I believe, for Kirsty in the chat around the sort of global portfolio. I don't know if that was in one of your slides, Kirsty, around possibly Asia and Pacific areas. Are you able to give a bit of information or overview on the sort of size of the portfolio in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies about the kind of slides maybe kind of clicking on too fast, but yeah, so at the moment we've got kind of presence, or we're entering kind of Japan, Taiwan and the Philippines. So Japan, we've got a pipeline of about 1.8 gigawatts, Taiwan is 1.2 and the Philippines is around 3.5 gigawatts. As Claire says, the slides will be shared, but there's more information on the website, so please get in touch if you want to know any more about the APAC kind of pipeline, and I'd be happy to give more details directly.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Kirsty. We can follow up on that if needed. We've got a question around the focus on blade inspection that came through during Daniel's presentation, so I might come to Daniel next. The question is, why the focus on blade inspection? Shouldn't the priority be solutions to improve leading edge protection? Inspection doesn't necessarily solve the problem of blade erosion. And I think from our perspective, in terms of looking at improving reliability, projects or proposals looking at blade inspection methods and also improvements or solutions for leading edge protection would be eligible. So we're interested in sort of both areas, but I don't know if you've got any sort of particular challenge area around blade inspection that you want to go into a little bit more detail, Daniel.
Not any. We don't have any specific challenge on that other than the ones that I commented. It is true that the source is the erosion of the blades, and this is a known issue for the industry. In the meantime, while we try to resolve the blade erosion, which is proving difficult, We would like to monitor the blades. We would like to inspect them well. We would like to automatically get insights from those inspections to that allow us to take O&M decisions in order to maximize the operation of the wind farm through the blades operation maximization. So yes, the answer is yes, but that's a much harder problem to solve, I would say.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for that. And again, I guess just to reiterate, for us, blade inspection is an interesting one because any sort of innovative solutions that can be brought to the table that will avoid, you know, sending a person up a blade. If we can avoid that, if there's any sort of you know, robotic or autonomous solutions that can be used for blade inspection, we're really interested in that. So it is certainly a big challenge area that would come under the scope of this particular competition on reliability. Okay, so moving on to a question here from Mark. Is there a limitation on subcontract value within an application? So we don't actually have a set limitation on subcontracting, but what I will say is that it needs to, your overall project budget will need to show that there is good value for money. And ultimately, we want the lead applicant to be the key beneficiary of any funding. So while we encourage you to bring in subcontractors and project partners to deliver elements of the project, we want to make sure that the lead applicant is sort of benefiting from the grant. So just to bear in mind the sort of portion the portion of the project budget being allocated to subcontracting isn't more than what the would be going to the sort of the lead applicant in terms of labour costs or any kind of in contribution. But if there's any, if you're unsure about that and you want to have a sort of chat offline about project size and value going to subcontractors, just get in touch with us and we can give you more specific advice. There's a question here about, can you submit a consortium / partnership if grant value is under the £200,000? If I understand that correctly, the answer to that would be yes. You don't need to submit an application for the full grant allocation. In fact, that makes it more competitive if you do. So absolutely, you know, we welcome a consortium to apply. And I think Tom might have covered this, but just in case, the way that we work in terms of contracting is that OWGP will contract directly with the lead applicant. And then it's up to that lead applicant to then manage the sort of contracting with any partners or subcontractors. So, but anyway, but yes, the answer to that question is yes. Even if it doesn't matter what the grant value is, you can submit a sort of partnership type proposal. Couple of other questions coming in here. If the application submission is a partnership of a Scottish company as the lead with a joint venture partner from overseas, is this acceptable? So I think that's a very good question. I think, like Tom said in the presentation, typically because of what the spirit of OWGP has been set up to do to help UK businesses, we want to make sure that the benefits are being delivered in the UK and that UK companies are seeing the benefit of the funding and actually delivering that impact. So if there is a requirement or a reasonable justification to have a partner that is overseas, I think we'd certainly be open to seeing that. So do get in touch with us and let us know kind of what the nature of that relationship is and what the nature of that project would be, and we can certainly manage that on a case-by-case basis. So that I think that was something that we would review case by case. Just going on to some more questions here. Would proposals focusing on reliability for elements specific to floating wind be considered, or do proposals need to apply to both fixed and floating? I would say that they don't necessarily need to apply to both fixed and floating. It would really depend on the nature of the project and the nature of the technology or service or product that's being developed. Ultimately, we want to see projects or solutions that will be ready to brought to market as a result of this project. So what's it's going to be ultimately then ready for commercialization. So it really depends at what stage of development that's in. So absolutely, we're open to seeing solutions for elements that might be more suited towards floating, but we want to see as part of that application process that you're able to demonstrate that market requirement, what that addressable market might look like in floating. But again, happy to touch base offline on that if you want to give us a little bit more information. And sorry, I'm just lost the question. So would there be multiple projects selected under each area until £200,000 grant in each area is reached? So I think if I understand that correctly, so ultimately we have a competition pot of £2 million that's split into the two strands. We want to make sure that we allocate that entire pot if we can. So what will likely happen is that there'll be a blend of smaller grants towards the lower end of the scale, probably more of those towards between sort of 25k to 75k, and there'll be fewer projects at the sort of 100k to 200k mark. So we're expecting a bit of a blend, but essentially, yes, there'll be multiple projects selected under each area until the full pot has been allocated. Question here from Mike. Both Equinor and Ocean Winds have a significant amount of floating projects in their portfolios. For the improved reliability call, should the innovation be focused to serve both fixed and floating, or can it be type specific? Sorry, so I think we've kind of covered that slightly in the previous question about floating. I would say that from a program perspective, we're very open to solutions that are fixed or floating. If you've got something that is, there's a real market need for it, whether it's fixed or floating, we're interested. And I think we certainly take steer on our industry sponsors on where the key areas are, the key focus areas, and how that relates to, developer pipeline, because ultimately those will be key customers. So I would say that we're open to fixed or floating. I don't know if any of the industry sponsors want to come in there, if there's any sort of comments or thoughts on that. Daniel, I see you put your camera
Yeah,
on.
we are agnostic. So both of them are interesting for us, both floating or fixed, or the two of them. So anything.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I might have covered all of the questions. I'm just seeing if there's anything that has been missed. There was a question about presentation being shared. We'll absolutely share the slides and share the recording. After this, we'll make sure and circulate contact details and make introductions as appropriate with our sponsors. Yeah, no, I think we've covered all questions, and with 3 minutes to spare, which is great considering we were late getting started. So I guess we're happy to kind of close the session now. If there are any further questions, do just send an email to myself or Tom, and we'll happily get back in touch with you. Big thank you to everybody who has joined right to the end, and huge thank you to Daniel, Kirsty and Sophie for delivering excellent presentations, highlighting some of the key challenge areas aligned with our competition theme. Delighted to have each of them on board and supporting this competition, so thank you. And I think that's all from me. Tom, anything I've missed?
No, I think that's everything. So yes, again, thank you for joining. The webinar will be sent out, so you have access to the recording and the slides. And yeah, once again, just thanks to industry sponsors for the presentations today. So, yeah, thank you for that. And that'll be us for today, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.